Hello and welcome to Paint and Haint. I want to say happy Juneteenth. This is my Juneteenth episode. So today we're going to talk about a man who lived about 140 miles east of here in the 1800s, and he's a very interesting man. His name was Grandison Harris. So who is Grandison Harris? Now, if you have heard of him, cool. But if you haven't, you are in for a treat. So should I call it a treat? Yeah, we'll call it a treat. So, Grandison Harris was purchased in Charleston, South Carolina in the year 1852 at the age of 36 for the Medical College of Georgia. And he was owned by specifically 7 of the staff members. So, his job at the college, his official job, was to be a porter and a janitor. And so, as a janitor, he would help clean up after the medical students. Um, and as a porter, he would help probably carry their luggage, carry different things around that needed to be carried around. But Grandison Harris had another job. So, his other job was to be a resurrection man. So, what is a resurrection man? So, a resurrection man is somebody that's essentially a grave robber. It's a nice way, a euphemism of grave robbing, saying someone was a grave robber. So, that was his job. So, what he would do to get this task done, well, first of all, let's go back. So, why was he a grave robber? So the reason that he had to do this for the he wasn't doing this off of like GP. He was doing this for the college. So dissection was illegal in the state of Georgia at that time. They saw it as being sacrilegious because they saw it as being a desecration of a human, of a person that had once lived. And so these students could not get bodies that they needed to study on because I guess they wanted to feel what they need to feel and see what they need to see. So they have Grandison go out and get these bodies. So what he would do is he would look through the obituaries or look through the newspaper looking for funeral announcements. And there's another thing, Grandison Harris could read and write. So that's how he's able to figure out who's getting buried and where they're getting buried. Now, his cemetery of choice to go to was the Cedar Grove cemetery. So Cedar Grove Cemetery was a cemetery that was for the poor and the Black community. And the reason he went there was because, it's the poor and the Black community, so I guess he's thinking people aren't going to be missed, which did pose a problem for how people in the Black community saw him. But, I get it. So he would go there at midnight, so very late at night, and he would get in there, get in the cemetery, and dig down to where the coffin was, split the coffin open with an axe. Then he would pull the body up, haul the body up, put the body in a wagon, and then he would, put the grave back together. And they said that he would memorize how the funeral flower, like the flower arrangements, looked on the grave, so that if anyone came by to visit their loved one, they wouldn't suspect that somebody had tampered with the grave. And so he does this. Now, the students loved him for this because he is doing their dirty work for them. And the staff loved this because they ain't got to be bothered with the authorities if something goes down. And it said that his enslaved status, would protect him. Honestly, I don't know about that. I don't, because they would just get Black folks for anything back then. So I'm not sure what that means. But he didn't get caught. So he does this for years. And again, he's beloved by the students to the point where the students would kind of treat him like a lab assistant, and they would have him assist in different things they were doing, different anatomy things they were doing. And I think at one point it said that he may have like helped them study, because if you are in the medical field, anatomy can be hard. You need someone to bounce off of so you can remember these things, these different body parts and what they do and all of that. So everything is going well for the college, and then the Civil War breaks out. And of course, following the Civil War, African Americans are freed here in the United States. And Grandison Harris, of course, was one of those people. So he moves across the river to Hamburg, South Carolina, which I don't think I need to look up if it's still there. I'd like to see what he saw, at least, to a degree. So anyways, he moves over to Hamburg, South Carolina, and this is in a Reconstruction era. So they're like basically trying to put black people specifically into Southern society as normal people and not as slaves. Now, he becomes a judge over in Hamburg. And also he's there with his wife and his son. So he's doing well. But then, Reconstruction reconstructed itself out. And so he has to move back across the Savannah River to Augusta. And he has to take his job of being a resurrection man, back. However, by this point, it's 1887, and grave robbing is illegal, to which I'm like, shouldn't it have been illegal in the first place? But whatever, Georgia, we some late bloomers down here. So they were like, okay, yeah, no, really, that's illegal. So what Grandison Harris does is he goes and assists in buying cadavers, dead bodies, from hospitals, prisons, poorhouses. They said the poor, so I'm thinking poorhouses or something like that, or something to that effect. And on top of that, he's still grave robbing. So he's like still going in and getting these bodies from the cemetery. Now, on top of all of this, he is maintaining quite a life in Augusta. He's part of the high-end African American society over there. I say over there because it's east of me. He becomes part of an organization called the Colored Knights of Pythias. He even has, and this tickled me because it's like, it's so specific. I feel like it's so specifically Southern. I don't think they do this in other regions. He had a winter and a summer wardrobe. Now, the reason that tickles me is because that is such a thing in my house. Like, we have our winter clothes, we have our summer clothes, and they do not touch. They don't cross. You don't cross the streams, as the Ghostbusters say. But while he's living this good life, he's getting flack from the college. So the students, they liked him so long as he stayed in his place. And what I mean by stay in this place is you're a slave and you get the bodies for us. You do the dirty work. We ain't got to do that. We don't want to touch we don't want to mess up our aristocratic hands. So they would rudely call him judge. Like they would be like, oh, hey, judge. Hey, judge. Like they would just be very rude. Basically making fun of the fact that he lost his position as a judge over in Hamburg. Over in South Carolina. So, like I said, he's still living his life. But again, on top of that, we still got the black community, the poorer blacks, the less fortunate blacks in Augusta. We're kind of side-eyeing him because they're just like, you still over there digging graves up for them white folk? Ew. So it's messed up, but I still think that he's like an interesting person because you don't hear about this kind of stuff in relation to Black people. Like up until a couple of years ago, I'd only heard of Burke and Hare from over there in, what was that, Ireland? So Ireland or Scotland, where they were resurrection men. So Grandison Harris, of course, gets older, and his son takes over the role. Now, his son was not as good as his father, and people were like he was sloppy. They said that they went in the lab, and the lab was a hot mess. If you can call it a lab, it was a hot mess. Bones strewn all over the floor. Think about it. These people have been hacked up, and it was heinous. And so I think they fired him, or they were just like, "Yeah, no, you can't. You can't. You're not your dad, right?" Um. So Grandison Harris, though, he passes away in 1911, and he is actually buried in the very cemetery, Cedar Grove Cemetery, that he did his resurrectioning in. But the story don't end there. So how do we know about Grandison Harris and the Medical College of Georgia, which one of my neighbors actually goes to now? Um, so the way we found out about what the college was doing and Grandison Harris's, I guess you could say, legacy, or like who he was, is because in 1989, when they were redoing the old medical college building, it had been a lecture hall from, I think it said 1889 to 1913 or 1865. I can't remember the year. I'll post what the year is down here in the byline for you. But they're doing these resurrecting. No, they're working on the building, and they start to come across bones. They said they found over 100,000 bones, over 1,000 bones. And it was said that 77% of them were of African American descent, and most of them were male. So he was like, "I'm not touching the women vote," which I could say that's honorable. I guess you could say that. That's an honorable thing. Um, So yeah, so that's how they found out about Grandson Harris. They found, okay, so it's not just bones they found. They found like the whole process. It was like 19th century Dexter down there. So not a kill room, but just like how they would keep the bodies fresh, I guess you could say. So they found a vat, or like a tub, and there were these whiskey bottles, broken whiskey bottles around it. And in those, so they figured out they were whiskey bottles, and what they also figured out was that was how they would preserve the bodies and alcohol. So they found that. They found disarticulated bones is the word, is the phrase. And what that means is basically just like, I don't know, half a pelvis over here, is that a femur over there, like that kind of thing. That's where they found that, or that's what they found in this basement. And not surprisingly, this basement is, or this building, the old medical college building, is said to be haunted. People have heard disembodied voices, they've felt presences. There was one podcast I was listening to that they like talk about Grandson Harris, and they painted him as like a malevolent spirit. But honestly, I don't think he would have been a malevolent spirit. I don't see that from what I know of him from this. So that is the story of Grandison Harris and the Augusta Medical College and their very creepy past. And anybody who watches this from the Augusta Medical College, or the Medical College of Georgia is what it was called then, Don't feel bad because you are not the only school in the world who was doing this. So I'm not coming for y'all. I'm just like referring to someone who was in your employ, if I may. But if you want to hear more creepy stories like this, or you can follow me here on YouTube, or you can check me out on TikTok where I will have this in a short form version. And happy Juneteenth. Bye.